Jamaica's heritage is vast and diverse. That's why you shouldn't feel too bad if a foreigner knows of an aspect of the culture that you may not be aware of. There is, however, some basic civics knowledge that you should know. Today we brush up on our heritage facts. It's National Heritage Week. This is Jamaica Magazine and I'm Adrian Atkinson. Stay with us for a culturally rich rediscovery of the land of our birth.
Aged 9 to 12 enter the essay competition. Write 500 words on the topic, how has Jamaican music contributed to the country's growth and development?
All entries must be submitted by Sunday, October 28th.
Prizes and surprises await you in the 2018 Jamaica Information Service Heritage Competition.
Good day, I'm Lorraine Mendez and this is your JIS News for Tuesday, October 9. 18.6% reduction in 4 categories of major crimes. That's the latest figures coming out of the Jamaica Constabulary Force, JCF. From January 1 to October 6, the JCF is reporting 21.6% fewer murders, while shootings reduced by 17.4% and rape and aggravated assault a little over 15%. There was also a reduction in the number of robberies and break-ins, while larceny went up by 8%. According to the JCF, 76 more assorted firearms were recovered when compared with the same period last year, as well as 5,795 rounds of ammunition. Meanwhile, areas under the enhanced security measures continue to see a decline in major crimes. St. James recorded 156 less murders between January 1 and October 6 when compared with the same period in 2017. The parish also had 98 less shootings and 6 less robberies. Meanwhile, St. Catherine North registered a 42% reduction in shooting, 24% in murder, and 41% in robbery. Over in Kingston and St. Andrew, shootings were down in the Kingston Western, Central, and Eastern divisions. This continues in the St. Andrew South and North divisions. The declining trend continues for murder in the same areas with the exception of Kingston Eastern and St. Andrew Central. In other news, Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton is standing by government's policy to ban sugary drinks in schools. Dr. Tufton insists that the aim of government's policy is not to stop children from consuming sugary drinks, but to reduce their intake. He says schools are one of the mediums being used to achieve that as part of a broader initiative to reduce non-communicable diseases, which include obesity.
We don't want to complicate the argument or be distracted by all of the noise and the clutter that's taking place out there and technicalities. The simplest way to communicate to people is that excessive consumption of sugar is bad for your health, and we are making our children sick when we expose them in this manner.
Minister Tufton was speaking at a post-UN high-level meeting press briefing at his office on Monday. He asserted that his ministry was guided by recommendations from the Food Industry Task Force, which was supported by the World Health Organization. The ban on sugary drinks in schools takes effect in January 2019. In other health news, the Portfolio Minister says a Take Responsibility road tour is to begin this month. While addressing Monday's post-UN high-level meeting briefing, Dr. Tufton said the town hall-type meeting would seek to widen discussions on matters surrounding public health.
The intention is to feature a clinical perspective on where we are and where we need to go, a policy perspective as it relates to what the government is doing and what we intend to do going forward.
The discussions will cover lifestyle practices and their impact on non-communicable diseases. Focus will also be placed on promoting good health, as well as the development of a national health insurance scheme.
The consultants have just concluded the first draft of their study with recommendations as to how to approach a national health insurance scheme, and that is now being examined internally, ultimately leading to a cabinet discussion and decision, and then the country will be informed.
And finally, completion of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs building in downtown Kingston is on track for year-end. Touring the facility on Friday, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, Audrey Sewell, said work was scheduled to finish by the end of November. The installation of furniture and other fixtures will continue to March next year. Ms. Sewell says the two-year project, which started in November 2016, has had a good and stable industrial climate, employing over 100 Jamaicans. She says moving the Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade Ministry downtown will add to the physical and economic development of the area.
To move a very significant government ministry here is the beginning in terms of the government signaling that it is serious and taking the lead. It is serious about transforming downtown Kingston.
The 11-story building is being constructed under a grant from the Chinese government and the government of Jamaica. The project is being managed by the Urban Development Corporation. And that's it for JIS News today. I'm Lorraine Mendez. Thanks for watching.
We have a subculture that supports those who do not inform, an anti-informer culture that pervades our entire society that we must break down.
Here is a piece of our heritage that you can boast about on social media. The government used to meet at where is now known as the Jamaica National Heritage Trust. At that time, it was known as Headquarters House. It was not until 1960 that Gordon House, the current meeting place, was built. It is located at the same place on Duke Street, next door to the trust. From there, Prime Minister Andrew Holness last week made a few announcements about the proposed development of National Heroes Park. Take a look.
State of emergency for Kingston and St. Andrew extended. Ground broken for $860 million Maxfield Park housing development. And
I also want to report that the commission that I have empaneled to review the future of Petrojam has started and is working.
You're watching Jamaica House Weekly. I'm Simone Wolfe. At the start of the week, Prime Minister Andrew Holness was in Parliament seeking an extension to the state of emergency in effect for 3 Kingston and St. Andrew police divisions. The enhanced security measure, which was first installed on September 23, has been lengthened to January 7, 2019. As he piloted the resolution Tuesday, the Prime Minister said the 3-month extension was necessary to quell persistent violent crimes and gang warfare in the communities.
A continuing development is the inclusion of children who are victims of and are also being used in the furtherance of crime. The informed opinion of the security forces has been that the level of criminal activity experienced continue to be a threat in certain areas and is of such a nature and so extensive in scale as to endanger public safety.
Areas covered under the state of emergency include parts of the Kingston Western, Kingston Central and St. Andrew Southern police divisions. Also at Gordon House Tuesday, the Prime Minister revealed that the first stage of the National Architectural Design Competition for the development of the new Houses of Parliament complex was near completion. As for the wider government Oval project, government is currently engaged in a feasibility study which will consider viable options for financing and implementation. On Wednesday, the Prime Minister broke ground for the 210-unit, $860 million Maxfield Park housing development in Kingston. It's part of the National Housing Trust's 1,000-unit community renewal program.
In Majestic Gardens, there will be 32 units developed. In Mona Commons, there will be 225 units to be developed. In Rasta City, in Tivoli Gardens, there will be 93. In Denham Town, there will be 28. In Juna Crescent, in Clarendon, there will be 70. In Canterbury, in St. James, 76.
100 houses are to be constructed in St. Paul's Lane in Tower Hill and 131 at White Wing in Olympic Way in St. Andrew. Mr. Holness used Wednesday's groundbreaking to signal his intent to bring the completed commissioned strategic review of the National Housing Trust to Parliament for a debate. That debate, he said, would be had before year's end.
That report has in it many proposals as to how we can reform the NHT so that it can both support the national agenda items, such as the economic program, but also how to expand its true mandate, which is to increase home ownership in Jamaica.
Also Wednesday, the Prime Minister dispatched the permanent secretaries in the Ministries of Labour and Economic Growth and Job Creation to a meeting with China Harbour Engineering Company, CHEC. Discussions focused on the work stoppage on the Mandela Highway project. During the meeting, CHEC representatives assured that rates paid to workers were based on industry standards. They also said they would meet the December deadline for the project's completion despite the disruption. Back at Jamaica House, the Prime Minister engaged in talks with several stakeholders this past week. On Tuesday, he discussed the island's housing sector with the Realtors Association of Jamaica. Tuesday also saw Mr. Holness meeting with a delegation from EnviroNet. This private sector organization of Jamaica PSOJ portal gives members access to information to improve environmental performance and sustainable development. By Wednesday, Mr. Holness was holding talks with head of the Constituency Development Fund, Kadisha Campbell, as well as members of the Jamaica Defence Force, the National Housing Trust, and the Jamaica Constabulary Force. He also discussed diaspora engagement with New York State Assemblyman Nick Perry. And Mr. Holness held talks with a delegation from Choose Life International also on Wednesday.
We see the introduction of LPG into our local market as an innovative move that diversifies the options for our consumers.
Prime Minister Andrew Holness endorsing GB Energy Texaco Jamaica's liquid petroleum gas called Autogas. The petrol alternative aims at reducing fuel costs to motorists while decreasing carbon dioxide emissions into the environment. At Friday's launch, the Prime Minister called on the private sector to increase investment in innovations that will boost their operations and the Jamaican economy.
In the new model for growth for Jamaica, the reliance cannot be on the government to innovate and lead growth. It has to be the private sector.
He also gave an update on the work of the Commission, which was set up to carry out a strategic review of Petrojam.
I am pleased to report that Petrojam is now up and running fully and supplying the needs of the market. I also want to report that the Commission that I have empaneled to review the future of Petrojam has started and is working.
The 10-member commission headed by Christopher Zaka began its work in September. And that's how we close out Jamaica House Weekly. We return next week with more of the news stories coming out of the office of the Prime Minister.
Protect Jamaica, plant your grass. Help us become more resilient to climate change impacts. Protect Jamaica, plant a tree. It improves the island's national biodiversity. Trees may be fruit, ornamental, or timber, but must be native or suitable to the area's natural landscape. Join the Jamaica Million Tree Campaign and help to plant 1 million trees by June 30, 2019. This is a call to action by the National Environment and Planning Agency.
This Jamaican treasure is strong and tall, making it a favorite for crafting furniture. You must know what I'm referring to, the national tree. Let's examine this beauty that's found at several of the island's parks.
The blue maho belongs to a family called Malvaceae. It's the same family that includes ornamental shrubs like shoeblack. So the scientific name for the blue maho is Hibiscus elatus. I imagine that the specific name, which is the elatus, would indicate the fact that it is lofty and grows to great heights. The blue maho, as everyone knows, is our national tree. Jamaica has well over hundreds of native trees. It's easy to understand that the combination of characteristics that makes the maho unique is probably what gave it the edge over all those other hundreds of trees. The native range of the blue maho is to the northeastern corner of Jamaica, which is Portland, sections of the Junker Mountain. The blue maho blooms in the latter part of the calendar. The typical color is a kind of flaming reddish orange. It's more red than orange. The older the flower becomes, the redder it becomes. It bears a pod that splits in the drier part of the early section of the year, the first quarter of the year. And the forestry department propagates the species by collecting the pods. We process them by drying them in trays, and then we extract the seeds. The traditional uses is a fairly wide array. It's used for furnishings, for furniture, for turnery, so you can make articles out of it.
The beauty of it is not much seen when you just cut it, but when the furniture is made and you look at it, you see various colors, and they go in streak and streak. And they're not looking so nice until when they varnish it. It's not stained or anything, just when they polish it off when it's finished. So they use it a lot now. It's strong. It reminds me of the lignum vitae, but the lignum vitae doesn't have those streaks in it like the blue maho. So it makes it very special.
I think people confuse the name lignum vitae and the name blue maho with their roles as national symbols, the one being the national flower and the other being the national tree.
Respecting yourself, how you carry yourself is very important. You hear me, young men? We take for granted oftentimes as men that people judge you before you even open your mouth. From they look at you, they form a perception. They make up their minds about you. So the question is, when they look at you, what do they see? understand you might not always agree, but you can respect somebody else's view.
Respect my lad.
Respect my dad.
Yeah, man, respect.
It doesn't take anything to be respectful. And you can never tell the impact you will have just by saying, good morning, please, thank you.
Respect.
There are many sites and monuments within rural areas that are designated heritage sites, and as such are managed by the Jamaica National Heritage Trust. For instance, out west in St. James is some Sharpe Square. There you'll find several heritage structures. Next, the national hero the square was named in honor of.
Think on this. How would you feel if Sunday is your regular rest day off from work, but just because Christmas Day falls on that day, your boss unilaterally decides you do not deserve an extra day of rest? Added to that, the previous Christmas you were entitled to 3 days off during the season, but months before this particular holiday, a law was passed giving only 2 days. This is the kind of injustice and ill treatment that was meted out to Samuel Sharpe. Up to 1830, the enslaved were allowed 3 days holiday at Christmas. In February 1831, the House of Assembly passed a law reducing Christmas holidays from 3 to 2, Christmas and Boxing Day only. Since Christmas Day 1831 fell on Sunday, a rest day, Sharpe believed that they were entitled to the following Tuesday. A strike ensued. The resistance to work ballooned into what history records as the Christmas Rebellion, the ill-fated event that helped pave the way to freedom. Born about 1780, Sam Sharpe was the slave of an English lawyer in Montego Bay, St. James. Sharpe was a lay deacon of the Birchell Baptist Church and became a leader in the congregation. Samuel, Sam, Daddy Sharpe, saw the injustices of slavery and inspired his fellow brothers and sisters to participate in Jamaica's first strike action. There were no labor laws at that time that spoke to the rights or privileges of slaves. Sharpe may be considered a forerunner to the labor movement as he fought for the rights of his fellow workers. For this, Samuel Sharpe was hanged on May 23, 1832. But as he said,
"I would rather die upon yonder gallows than live in slavery."
In 1834, the Abolition Bill was passed by the British Parliament, and in 1838, slavery was abolished.
The issue of sexual assault against women and children, including rape, is a major concern for Jamaica. The government is working hard to not only put away the perpetrators of violence against women and children, but also to provide support to the victims. One organization which offers tremendous support to the victims of sex crimes is the Victim Services Division of the Ministry of Justice. Last year alone, the division provided assistance to more than 13,000 victims.
The government provides this support for victims, and it will provide the support from the day you become a victim of crime. It will follow you through the process. If you have to go to court, it has various innovative approaches that is designed to build your capacity to go through your victimization. The court support, court orientation program of the Victim Services Division is one which has gotten the commendation of police and court officials right across this country. It has several components. Well, even before we actually get into the court, we had a phase where we provided technical capacity building for judges and magistrates across the island, prosecutors, police officers, in understanding the dynamics when a person becomes a victim of a crime. So then there is the working with court, where there's an orientation program which involves us taking particularly children to court before the court day to help them to understand the lay of the land. We actually now provide them with a sense of orientation to understand what it means to be ready for court, and we want to make clear that this is not coaching them or interfering with the evidence and the facts of the case. This is just dealing with the psycho-emotional and the realities from, going to court back and forth.
We also realized that a number of children were being victims of sex crime, and it's traumatic. And we felt we needed to bring just these victims into group counseling to be able to deal with some of the issues. We call it an overcomers program.
The Victim Services Division provides support to all, inclusive of free confidential counseling for all ages, no matter the victim's gender or sexual orientation.
It has gotten commendation from victims. We have a 95–96% rating among the persons who we serve.
Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. I'm gonna keep on walking, I'm gonna keep on talking, marching out to freedom land. Ain't gonna let no jailhouse turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let no jailhouse turn me round. I'm gonna keep on walking, I'm gonna keep on talking, ain't gonna let no jailhouse turn me round, turn me round.
Now moonshine bright tonight, how we are shine a big day, all night till daylight.
Secondary level students enter the poster competition with digital or illustrated pieces, and tertiary level students, the photo competition is for you.
The topic for the poster and photo competition is Jamaica's music, the stage for growth and development.
All entries must be submitted by Sunday, October 28th.
For additional information, visit the JS website at www.js.gov.jm. Email heritageposter, heritagephoto, all at js.gov.jm.
This is where the magazine closes for today. We hope you learned a thing or two or was refreshed on a bit of information on our country. If you want to know more on our country's history, click on our website and social media sites. Until next time, I'm Adrian Atkinson. Have yourselves a buenos evening.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.